which is, I want to be a homeowner, I'm going to find an agent, I'm going to find a lender, this is the part everybody's here for. So where is it that most first-time home buyers get stuck, from your perspective?
They're very scared, okay? So, from the very beginning, and I'm here to experience, I will work on helping, communicate with a first-time home buyer, helping them to say, look, the first thing we need to do is we need to get you set up with counseling. You need to get pre-qualified to see where you are. They will talk to me, but then once I start handing them off, they back up. And then I have to call them and say, hey, what's going on? We were very excited about doing this. They're just scared. They're scared that they're going to be turned down, that it's not going to work. They're not going to get approved. They're going to be embarrassed. And we have to assure them that we're there with them to help them no matter what their situation is. No matter if they can buy now or if it's going to be a couple of years from now. And that's what I try to help them to understand with the process. That, hey, look, it doesn't have to be today, but we're going to be here with you whenever you're able to do this.
Fear is definitely a huge one. And when they come to housing counseling, we often the credit is a challenge. That's where sometimes they get stuck because the answer may have been no. And so housing counselors are there, right, to help them work through those credit challenges, but getting them to that point and keeping them motivated. So housing counselors are trying, that's their goal, to keep them on that action plan, working toward those steps that they need to overcome the obstacles. And so that's what we're trying to work through. But again, partnering to keep them engaged through that process, because sometimes it takes a little while. So that's what we've done.
Tell me about that partnership. What does that look like? Who are you thinking of?
So mostly, and it involves all of us really, because the agents are waiting in the wings, aren't they ready yet, things like that. But also, I found working with the lender, right? So because maybe this lender only needed them to take care of these 2 things, whereas lender B needed them to do 4 things. So communicating with the lender, I found is super helpful. What do they need? Since they've already, contacted them, they're working with them, so now let me find out what do they need to reach a yes from you, and now the housing counselor and the lender can work together to make that happen. We give it back to them, they're ready, now let's move forward. So that's how we've been working, and it's been working so far.
So yes, I'm so great that I'm so happy that you mentioned the lender, because I just want to get to my part. So yes, the pre-approval process, yes. A lot of them drop off because then they hear about the expenses, out-of-pocket expenses that they need to save for a down payment, different things with the cost. But, and then also, like you mentioned, credit, just to let you know, I never turn down the customer saying that you're denied or use those type of words. No, I said, so let's see what we can do about credit. Once we get this done and get this fixed, then you take the next steps and do this, or how to work on the credit, or what to get rid of, or what should be in your credit report. How should you save for emergency funds? I sometimes tell the customer, each time you get paid, even if it's just $20, just go ahead and throw it in the bank and say, this is for my house. Put that $20 in the bank and then let it marinate and just act like it's not there. And just use it as something that as a goal to say, okay, I'm gonna try the first steps to try to purchase my home. I know I need to save up some money. So let me just open up this bank account or just have my savings account, and each pay period, even if it's just $5, before you know it, you have a nice set amount of emergency funds. You have some money for your down payment, some money for your closing costs, and I let them know that this is just a start, and in this way you can begin with everything. Now we do have those organizations, nonprofit organizations and grants to help them with down payment, closing cost assistance, but I always tell them, always have a backup plan. These programs are here to assist you, but you still need to have your own funds and to save up and to be, secure. So just in case things don't come through, you have those funds in the bank. So just take your time. I tell you, work on with your credit, what needs to be done, the credit cards below 30%, or if you need to even open up some credit, open up a secure credit card. So there's steps that they can take to start that home buying process, and don't get discouraged and say, no, I don't want to do this.
Before we keep going on the sort of the technical aspects and process, I want to invite Sonia. Your daughter just went through the process of becoming a homeowner. What is it like from your side of this experience? And I assume you didn't have a team of star players like you have here.
So, looking at my daughter wanting to move out on her own, I took her to look at rentals, and I wanted her to see how much house she was going to get for this price, giving this away, you're never going to own it, and when we got out there, she got a realtor, the realtor took us to look at different rentals. And in her price range, her budget, it was neighborhoods that she did not desire, houses that had just, minor, like slaps of paint, no real renovations or anything, old cabinets, and so she got to see, what was out there on a rental, and then looking at, okay, now let's see what you will qualify for, as an owner. And so now we are looking at houses on the market, for sale. She got to see the difference because everything that she liked on the rental was out of her budget. And so now she's able to look at houses that are in the conditions and neighborhoods that she preferred in the right price range. It's a mortgage that she could afford. But because me and my husband are into real estate, we were able to assist her in a way, but and also teaching her the value of home ownership, but she had to take the course, and I talked to her this morning. She's just trying to, her head, like, what were the benefits, the problems, some of the things that she didn't qualify for, some of the funding, so those are things that people are told, oh, you can get $20,000 and you can get $40,000, you can get $10,000, but you have to qualify for certain things, and you don't know these things going in. So having this counseling, we need more of that counseling, home ownership counseling. And the lenders. I love what she was saying, and when I was saying earlier about having that money, we pay car insurance, and now we have the car insurance out now for maintenance insurance. I think this is something that the bank should consider, a way of when you bring them to the table, and it's not, at this time, you're just able to just throw some money, you're already in the process of the purchasing process. So if you are able to get this information now, I'll say that it's something that the banks can offer, that you have this money, you can get, instead of just a savings or a checking account, a home ownership account, that you can start putting younger when you're not ready to start the purchasing process. But you can start investing in the future of a home.
I think that's wonderful, right? Because it kind of connects with what we were saying. We see with the lender, even at going back to the building of trust, if they hear you say to them exactly what their housing counselor has said to them now, okay, I'm hearing that same message, right? It's building that confidence, it's building the trust. And then like what Sonia said, we need more of the housing counseling, because how many of us is there, how many agencies do we have? What's the capacity for the counselors that are there? So all of that, the funding, where is it coming from? So all of that discussion needs to happen so that we can keep going with this work.
Let's talk about the subsidy programs, or the assistance programs for a minute, since you brought that up. Where is that helping, and where is it falling short that you're seeing?
It's definitely helping. As Ms. Sonia mentioned, sometimes they are not eligible, right, depending on the income that they have in the household and things of that nature. But it has been invaluable, just with the different programs and helping folks not only get in, but sometimes there's additional funding that they can put toward the principal, and now it's making that original loan, right, more affordable. So it's been great as far as the subsidy and the incentives. Sometimes, of course, they run out of money, and like Ms. Pamela mentioned, we have to encourage them up front. You gotta have skin in the game, start saving your money, because sometimes the funds run out, and we need to be prepared for those unexpected costs. But the incentives are there, and for the most part, they're working as long as they're available.
Thank you. So, yes, I see the subsidies work very, very well. I deal with the subsidies every day. It's how I structure the loan. And then I see where they work, where we can stack those subsidies, which works very, very well. And it really helps them out because, say for instance, if the purchase, we would pre-proven them, and the purchase price is a little bit above their level, and you know they're going to get the subsidies and everything else, and use it as a backup thing, as being approved for those subsidies. So if the purchase price is higher, maybe a little bit higher or out of their range, the subsidies come into play where they can put a larger down payment, and that would make things a little bit more affordable. It makes the payments a little bit lower. So I see it's a win-win with the subsidies. But always have a backup plan if some of those subsidies don't come through and they run out of funds.
I want to acknowledge that we have made a fatal flaw in recruiting this panel. You guys are the cream of the crop. Clearly the system is working as you're in it, but where are the opportunities to create better alignment across your roles that you're seeing?
I think the communication is the best way. Upfront expectations, like there's a lot of guidelines. Okay, you have to let us know 2 weeks before closing or when the closing date is, when they're supposed to do this next, what's the next step. So aligning the steps in the process, I think that communication needs to be upfront. And so you know what to expect and when in order to be successful at it.
I have a solution for that. Okay? I think that we should create a portal in the housing counselor, the lender, the realtor. Everyone is uploading information in the portal along with the client. Everyone gets to see what's going on. We all know what's happening, and we can make sure we're all on the same page. They do that with title work. Title work, we order it, most of them, there's a portal they send you, we send the client, they keep all the information in there. I think if we could come together and do something like that, we'll keep everything together and be very beneficial for the client.
But I do want to say that there is a portal.
Yes.
And that's where I've gone through an experience where the housing counselor would set up the portal. First, once they get their contract and their home, then I contacted the housing counselor that did their counseling, first-time home buyers, and then they have to go in, like the city of Baltimore, to set up the portal first, and then they pass it along to the lender to do the lender portion. So we're in communication, and I let the counselor know, hey, she has a contract in the home. These are the monthly payments. These are the grants that she's going to be getting that we're looking for her to approve. So it is set up in, in all across the board with a portal, but that's where I see the communication between the housing counselor and the lender.
Yeah.
And then after that,
all.
you mean everybody?
I
Okay.
mean all, even the client. I
Even
think
the client,
that
yes.
everyone is engaged in that. The client benefits more because they see what everyone is. The client gets to see.
See what everyone is saying and all the information all at one time. Like I said, we do very good at passing stuff off to each other, or working together as teams sometimes, but we lose it once the client is not engaged in that process.
So the portal needs to have transparency to all the actors, including the client.
Yes.
And the name of this magical portal, let's handle that.
I think
Go ahead.
she's talking about neighborhood.
Yes.
Neighborly?
Neighborly portal.
Neighborly.
Neighborly,
Okay.
which is what we use for the city incentives. But there is also a portal being worked on, what you're talking about, your idea. Talk about that there.
Okay, that's good, that's good, that's good.
Yeah,
I do know of one portal that, they do send an email to the, homebuyer also. That was the neighborly portal too.
Okay.
They do kind of involve them a little bit, but not everything, but just to keep them intact where things are.
Alright, well, we'll get together at a bar after this, and you guys can watch this. I want to move this, I want to keep us going and move us on to the last page.
Because sometimes
Yeah.
the lenders, right, if they come from other areas outside of Baltimore, sometimes they're not always familiar. So that's
Right.
one area too that we found is a breakdown
Familiar with
with
programs?
Baltimore City,